Mark your calendar for next week, Sunday, girlfriend.
Is that the poetry thingy I saw?
No, the poetry's this. The poetry one is this Saturday, but next Sunday, before Memorial Day, is going to be improv.
Awesome. Okay.
Ooh.
Looking forward to that.
So it'll be up on the Facebook probably later tonight, and I'll be sending it out.
All right,
Awesome.
everybody, it's 5 on the dot.
5 o'clock.
Cute. That sounds fun.
Kevin. I don't see Scott today. All right, so just us. All right.
Mountain time at 5. Hi, everybody. Hope everybody is doing well. And I have a couple of quick announcements that I wanted to share with you. One, oh man, I was honored. I was on the Southern Oregon. I know you. I heard your voice about an hour ago. I was honored to be talking about kernel books on a Pennsylvania call. And I just think that our organization has done a wonderful job of protecting and connecting the rights of blind people and blind people all together and all over the country. And it's really, truly, genuinely a heartwarming thing. Want to remind folks to help promote the Bell at Home edition. We could have the biggest bell we've ever had in Colorado, maybe the biggest bell across the country. It's going to be virtual. The application and all the information, folks, is on our NFBCO blog spot. It's up there. It'll go on Newsline. And please help us to promote the Bell program because the NFB of Colorado is working on some other really, really cool education initiatives. And this is going to be the real extension of and precursor to some exciting things that we're going to do over the next months and years to come. In a couple of weeks on one of these Mountain Time 5 calls, we're going to have a focus group about the future of employment during and after the next sort of phase of pandemic, how it's going to affect blind people. And in fact, I just read a book suggested by Dr. Maurer, The World of Work by Daniel Susskind. If you're interested in this kind of field of exploration, what's the future of employment for people and particularly blind people going to be like, we'll do a call around that. And before we do it, we'll send you guys some links with some information. Okay, welcome to the call. I'm looking forward to learning how to eat. Jess?
All right. Well, thanks everybody for being here. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Maureen and then we'll get started.
Okay, everybody, just another reminder of our hotline. The number is 303-778-1130, extension 219, or email assistance@nfbco.org. That is assistance@nfbco.org. Thank you.
All right, everybody. So today we're going to be talking a lot about eating during the pandemic. We were supposed to have a special guest from Washington, David Fair, but unfortunately something has come up with one of his kiddos, so he is not going to be with us tonight. So Maureen and I are going to do our best to get through this with you. And so Maureen is going to kick it off with some helpful tips about stress eating.
Okay, so thank you everybody for joining us. And like Jess said, I'm going to start out with talking about, stress eating, what that is, ways to recognize if you are stress eating, and then some helpful tips to help avoid it. And then I'm also going to be talking about going meatless. And don't get scared. That doesn't mean, everybody should give up every piece of meat that they are ever going to eat ever. But as we are currently seeing some meat shortages, we're just going to talk about ways that you can still get your protein and feel good not eating meat. So I got to say, I saw this really funny meme, and it was a person standing in front of the refrigerator, and they're like, what happens when you eat 2 weeks worth of snacks in 2 days? That's how you know you're in a global pandemic. And so a lot of us, we eat out of boredom, we eat out of stress, and we eat for comfort. And this can be a problem, right? So what actually is stress eating? And so stress eating really just means that you are eating for comfort, that you are eating after a stressful event, and you're doing this and you may not even be realizing that you're doing it. And so oftentimes too, you can find that you're eating in odd places, you're eating alone, not with others, because you're not enjoying it the same way. It's not, there is a lot of socializing with eating. And, you find you're not doing that anymore. You notice that, if you get bad news, if you are watching the news, and you're seeing, all these numbers are rising up, and then you have a specific food craving when you're upset, that can be another sign that you are eating out of stress. Another way you might know that you're eating out of stress is because you're just eating for something to do. It works for you as a distraction. And another reason that we find ourselves eating for stress is because of the release of cortisol. And so when we are under stress, our bodies release more cortisol, and this is a hormone, and it actually increases your hunger. And so you may be thinking to yourself, God, why am I hungry all the time? And it's because our bodies are under stress and we're producing more of this stress hormone. So let's just talk about some tips to avoid eating out of stress. And then also, of course, that incorporates boredom too, because some of us can be pretty bored during this time. I actually am not bored at all during this time. I'm happy about that. But for a lot of people, it can lead to being bored when you're stuck inside the house. So think about adding snacks to your day that are a little bit more full of protein, like seeds and nuts. These kinds of snacks are definitely healthier options, and they keep you fuller longer. Use what you have at home before you go grocery shopping. This way it helps to not overbuy and purchase things that are going to lead you to be eating, bigger portions and more. So think about, when you sit down and you're going to make a meal plan, think about what you have in the freezer, what you have in the refrigerator, and only get what you need from the store to complete the meals. So something that I think that we all kind of ran into during this pandemic is the need to kind of hoard buy, and panic buy. And so a lot of that is slowing down now, and we're seeing that we're able to get delivery times, and we're seeing more things in stores, fresh produce and things like that. So try to, kind of wrap your mind around that, and don't feel like you need to panic buy. Also think about being the gatekeeper for what comes into your house. So remember that if it's in your house, it's in your mouth. So if you buy it, you're going to eat it. So really think about, do you want that snack, or do you want that ice cream when you are putting it on your grocery list? Maybe even sometimes what I do is, like, I'll browse and I'll see something that I really want. I know it's not the best for me. I'll pass it and be like, oh, well, I'll think about it and see what my total is at the end, how much money my groceries cost before I decide to add snacks. And that really helps me actually not to add snacks, because they can really hike up your grocery bill. Another great tip is having beans for breakfast. So beans are thought to have a secondary meal effect, which means they actually keep you more satisfied longer and keep you from feeling hungry throughout the day. So, I like to have avocado toast and adding some hummus onto that and getting those garbanzo beans in there. And I can eat refried beans any time of the day. So also think about planning your snacks just like you plan your meals. So, if you're planning out your breakfast, lunch, and dinner, plan what you're going to have to snack on that day. Maybe even set it aside so that you don't, over snack. Also be aware of watching your sugar intake. And this is a kind of crazy fact, but the World Health Organization actually only recommends 4 teaspoons a day as a healthy intake of sugar, which is like absolutely nothing. So if you think about that and really start reading your sugar labels and knowing how much sugar you're actually consuming, it'll really help to dial it back. Also, like we mentioned earlier, just think about not hoarding, because when you have too much, we're typically just going to eat more, especially having a lot of time on our hands. And then, when you shop, it's always good to kind of think about shopping the perimeter of this store, because that's where your healthier options are. And so if you are online shopping, think about going into those sections on your app first. So looking at your produce and your dairy and things that are going to be better for you than looking in those center aisles that say things like snacks and pantry staples. Always think about watching your portion sizes. And I think that a lot of us are ordering in food during this time, which I think it's awesome to support our local businesses. But I feel like you get so much food when you order out. I mean, like, you know, if we order from an Italian restaurant and I order some big ziti, I mean, it's definitely enough to feed 2 people or to make 2 meals. And so think about just portioning that right from the start, putting in your refrigerator and making 2 meals out of it. It helps to control your portions, and it also helps to control your spending. Something that we really like here is pizza. I should say I really like pizza. I grew up in Philadelphia. You always ate pizza on Fridays. And so I still do like to do that. But when we order a pizza, we freeze half of it. And so we have pizza one night, you know, and then the next week I don't have to order it again. I just pull out what I froze. And another tip that I just want to mention is to make sure you reach out and get help when you need it. If this is something that you're struggling with, you know, reach out to us or a friend or a wellness coach or, you know, someone who you just know knows a lot about nutrition, or anybody that you're comfortable talking about your stress with too, and help just to get your feelings out so that you don't feel like you need to compensate with over snacking. So I think we could stop here and take some questions.
Awesome.
All right. If you got any questions, it's *9 if you dialed in. It's Alt-Y on the Windows computer. And I think it was moved to
It's now under the participants section of the app. Mm-hmm.
All right. We've got Mark.
Yes. Couple of things I would say. And I would confirm that bit about getting so much more when you order out. I just ordered Chinese food tonight. Okay. And I live alone. So there's going to be enough for at least 1 or 2 more meals.
Sure.
I mean, it's just incredible. The other thing that I would have been told by the dietitian is that if you drink a lot of water before eating, you'll feel full and you just won't be wanting to eat as much.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great tip.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks,
Thank
Mark.
you.
Anyone else?
No.
All right.
That's it.
Okay, awesome. So now I'm going to talk about going meatless. And so many of you may have heard of Meatless Mondays, which is an initiative to advise people not to eat meat on Mondays to help their health and also the environment. So it's just a kind of fun thing to participate in, and it's a way to get used to not having meat at every meal or even every day. And so this initiative it's a nonprofit. It has a really awesome website with lots of great recipes, lots of great information there. So I definitely, you should check it out if you want to. But oftentimes when people know that you're not eating meat, they ask the question like, well, how are you going to get a complete protein? And what even is a complete protein? And so a complete protein is a food or a pairing of food that contains all 9 essential acids. These are the 9 essential amino acids that our bodies don't actually synthesize, and so we need to get them through our diet. But also keep in mind that every meal you have doesn't have to be a complete protein. You can get these amino acids through the day spread out through your diet. So kind of getting that out of your mind, I think, is really helpful. Also, just know that the amount of recommended protein is 0.8 grams for every 2 pounds. And so just to break that down a little bit, on average, a sedentary male should have 56 grams a day and a sedentary female should have 46 grams a day. And that's really not that much. It's not hard to get with not eating meat. And so I am going to list here for you some complete proteins just so you know which ones are out there and that they exist. So we have eggs, quinoa, which is actually a seed. A lot of people think it's a grain, but it's a seed. The pairing of rice and beans, hummus and whole wheat pita bread, a peanut butter sandwich, so 2 tablespoons of peanut butter and 2 slices of whole wheat bread is a complete protein, dairy, buckwheat. And so buckwheat isn't actually wheat at all. It's actually related to the rhubarb. So I just like to throw those little things in there because I definitely thought buckwheat was wheat before I read that. Soy, Ezekiel bread, seitan. And so seitan is, it's a meat substitute, and it's made from wheat gluten, and it's really high in protein. And as we know now, it's also a complete protein. And Ezekiel bread is just a type of bread. It's a sprouted bread. And so that just means that the wheat was allowed to germinate or sprout before it was milled into flour. And so that kind of grain has a lot more protein. And so I'm also going to just go through some foods that are not animal products that are really packed with protein so that you can get an idea of some regular things that we all should be eating and how much protein that they actually have. So we have broccoli, 1 cup, 6 grams. Chia seeds, 1 ounce, 5 grams. Chickpeas, 1 cup is 15 grams. So I'm a personal lover of chickpeas. They're great in salads. Hummus is also delicious. I could eat it every single meal. And then also a little tip is that you can use the liquid in a can of chickpeas and use that as egg white substitute when you're baking. Edamame. This is thought to be an almost perfect food because it has in just 1 cup, 8 grams of fiber, 17 grams of protein, and it's only 146 calories. So this is going on my next grocery list. Farro, which is an ancient grain, 1/4 cup is 6 grams of protein. Frozen veggie burger. So these are going to vary in flavor, taste, nutritional value, but you can kind of gauge that you're going to get about 10 to 15 grams per patty. Hemp seeds, 2 tablespoons, 6 grams. This is a great substitute for nuts when you're baking or adding into a smoothie. Jackfruit, it's not the highest in protein. A cup of it is, 3 ounces of it is 3 grams of protein, but jackfruit you're going to see a lot in like faux barbecue because it has this kind of stringy, meaty consistency like pulled pork. If you were at our state convention at the Halloween party that we had the vegetarian jackfruit barbecue sliders, and they were amazing. Kidney beans, 1 cup, 13 grams of protein, and also 13 grams of fiber. Lentils, 1 cup is 18 grams of protein and more than half of your daily requirement of fiber. So lentils is a great thing to have on hand all the time and eat it. It's so good for you. Nut butters, definitely not created equal, but you can expect that in 2 tablespoons, you're going to get about 4 grams of protein. Oatmeal, 1 cup is 6 grams. So if you add in some seeds and some peanut butter, that's going to be right there, probably more than half of what you need in protein for the day. Quinoa, 1 cup of quinoa is 8 grams of protein. Seitan, which we talked about before, it's hard to make, and seitan is, I'm going to tell you, it's not the easiest thing to prepare, but there's a lot of already prepared vegetarian products that are seitan, and it's actually really, really good. And it has about 15 to 20 grams for a half a cup. We talked about sprouted grain bread. So one slice is 4 grams of protein and only 80 calories. So it's a much better choice of bread. Soy milk is 8 grams of protein for a cup. So this is a great thing to add to your smoothies. Sunflower seeds. Who knew that a half a cup has 15 grams of protein? That's a great snack to have on hand. We were just talking about snacking. So tofu has 10 grams of protein for a half a cup. So that's just a list that I came up for with you guys. You can look up, whatever you want online and find lots of different websites that are going to have lists of food items and their protein. But I hope this gives you an idea that you definitely don't have to have meat at every single meal and you're going to still get lots of protein. do we want to stop here for questions?
Yes, I think that's great.
We've got a couple here. We've got Chelsea. You can hit on mute there. Or accept.
Sorry, had to run back to the phone.
That's
Two questions, because I just finished dinner. Mountain time at 5. 2 questions. Number one, yeah, you I don't know if you want to, but if you want to put that list out somewhere, that'd be amazing, because I really enjoyed this part of the presentation. And then I know I'm not the only one with this particular problem, but sometimes it sounds weird. Do you have any advice for, like, so when I'm stressed, my appetite disappears and I have other symptoms that make eating incredibly unpleasant. So I didn't know if you had any advice there, because sometimes it's hard to get food and calories in during those days.
Yeah. And so, you know, I don't know your particular situation or any dietary restrictions that you have, or anything, but I would just say that just eating small things throughout the day is helpful, and not think that, you know, you have to sit down and have a big meal. Eat 6 or 8 small little meals through the day.
And also, it might be a time to think about more of a bland diet, just because if you already are having, you know, some tension and upset stomach and things like that, just having very, you know, bland bananas, rice, that kind of thing would probably be easier on you than something very flavorful and spicy.
And thinking about
That's an interesting thing.
if it's easier for you to drink, you know, think about smoothies with and getting things like hemp seed and you know, putting a little peanut butter in there and a banana and, you know, berries, and, you know, to think about, you know, nutrition, because it might be easier to drink your meals if it's hard to eat.
Yeah, sometimes it is. So I appreciate that, because yeah, smoothies are good.
For myself, I really struggle with breakfast. I don't like to get up earlier in the morning than I have to, and so a lot of times I'm just running out the door. And so drinking a shake in the mornings for me is a really good way to get something in when I don't always, and my body doesn't always feel like taking something in.
Liz Morgan.
Hi. So I just wanted to say that a lot of the things you named, actually, I can't eat because I'm on the keto diet. But Ezekiel bread, yes, is very good. There's also another bread that is called the 247, and it is high protein. And also, because basically, for anyone who doesn't know, the keto diet is high protein, high fiber, low carb. So it's kind of similar to the Atkins. And also, going off of what you were saying about shakes, most grocery stores, Amazon, Walmart, they sell a product in the pharmacy department called Premier Protein. They have shakes, they have bars, and they're really tasty.
Cool, thank you.
I just thought I'd share.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's a lot of really great protein sources that you can buy at the store. It's gotten better. It's gotten a lot better over the last few years when people have been more conscious of that. And so it's you know, it's good to check those out and find out what works for you.
And when you are looking at those, though, make sure you're looking at the sugar content and those things, because a lot of times those bars, they are so delicious because they have so much sugar in them.
All right, we have Gail.
Can you hear me? No?
Yeah, we got you.
Okay, I didn't know if I had to unmute. A lot of good information here. Couple things, yeah, regarding, I'm vegan, so all the meatless thing did not freak me out. I do usually a smoothie for breakfast, a salad for lunch, and some kind of veggie burger, usually for dinner or something. Smoothies, I like to put spinach in mine because I hate because it fills it up more, and berries and protein powder and avocado, and I do all kinds of almond milk. That's another one that's always awesome.
Yeah.
So I do that. Another thing I was just thought of for people who don't have time for breakfast, you can do, if I'm really in a hurry, the night before, you can throw oatmeal in your cup, like a half a cup of oatmeal and a cup of water or milk. And you can put your nuts and your seeds and your berries and your sweetener and anything you want in there, and just stick it with the lid in the refrigerator overnight. All you got to do is put that in the microwave the next morning, and voila, it is oatmeal, which is really cool.
They're amazing.
Yeah, so a lot of people don't know. You think you have to cook it, but you really don't. But and I don't know if I was going to say something else, but and then beans are always another protein source, and nuts. So I always make sure I have beans in my salad for lunch. I have those stupid little beans.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, and we've got Marianne. There you go.
Hi, thanks. I just wanted to make sure, was it you, I forgot, was it edamame you were saying was like the perfect food?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. For the life of me, I can't remember what it tastes like and whether or not I like it. That's, I'm like,
They're good. It's a great snack. They're very, very good. A lot of people put salt on the outside, and then you just kind of run your teeth along it, and the little beans pop out of the shell, and it's just, it's really good. It's really good.
I like them a lot. I like the texture. I like the flavor.
Yeah. And you just steam them. They're super easy. You can buy them frozen. Just keep them in your freezer. They're good.
Kevin?
I can't eat the best food sometimes, you guys. Avocado, superfood, edamame, I can't stand. But it just shows that even though those might be the two perfect, you can always find enough other stuff on that list. You guys are so dynamic and so great, and I benefit so much, because here's the deal. A lot of us are not going to get on Bard and read all the myriad of nutrition books that there are out there. And both you guys always do such a great job with your coaching to kind of spur me on, and I really appreciate it. Jess, can you tell me what the chicken, not the seitan, but the wings at that one?
Gardein.
What's it called?
Gardein.
That's just
Gardein.
what?
Yeah. Oh, so is it like seitan, but it's just Gardein?
Well, it's made differently, but yeah, it's another meat substitute.
Okay.
Another.
All right.
So another thing, Kevin, to think about is too, like the things, if you want to incorporate them, smoothies are great ways to hide stuff because you can't taste them. If you just want the nutrition out of it, but like Gail was saying how she puts a lot of spinach in her smoothie, you can't tell that there's spinach in there.
Right. Yeah. Good. Yeah. The only other thing I would say is first in, first out. Right, Jess?
Absolutely.
In the food service, they teach you first in, first out, and it works just as well in conserve. In this pandemic, I've been really learning how to conserve food pretty well. Not hoarding. I listen to Maureen, but knowing that, okay, if you made spaghetti last night and rice the night before, eat the rice first, because the spaghetti, it's common sense, but people don't do it, and then they end up throwing a bunch of leftovers.
Yeah, you waste a lot.
Bye.
See ya. Another thing I wanted to mention is corn. It's just spelled Quarn, and it's a meat substitute. It was actually developed in the 60s from around that time. They were predicting a lot of food shortages around meat. And so it's made from a fungus and then combined, it's usually a mushroom, and then they combine it with egg or milk. So it is not vegan, but there's lots of corn products out there, chicken substitutes and things, and they're my favorite. They are so good.
We have NFB of Alaska.
Hey, this is Bonnie Lucas. So, hey, how are you guys? Couple of suggestions. I just recently read an article about beans. And so sometimes we think, oh, if you have beans, you gotta stir fry and put them in soup, or, make refried beans or whatever. What you can do, and I did this last night, because I didn't have any real protein in the couple of items I made. I didn't feel like there was enough protein. So I just took a can of beans and I drained it, rinsed it, And then I put it on the kitchen towel that was on the tray I was going to cook it on. And I just let it sit there for about 5 minutes and kind of dry out. And I patted the beans. And then I sprinkled a little oil over them, a little salt and pepper, a little cumin. You could get a spice blend like Ras Al Hanout or harissa or something like that. And just sprinkle some of that on there, or the Lebanese 7 spice, one of those, or probably even a Chinese 5 spice. Anyway, some kind of spice. And then you stick it in the oven. My oven was already on 425 because I'd roasted vegetables. And I just put them in there for 10 minutes and they came out and they were kind of crunchy. So we just, put them on top of our cauliflower and our potatoes dish. And then in the morning, I took what was left and smooshed it up and added a little goat cheese and I put it on toast. It was really good. So,
it's making me hungry.
Yeah, no, the nice thing about beans is any of them will kind of crisp up like that. And you can vary the spices so much. I totally love roasting. So it's the way to go every time.
I love garbanzo beans like that. I used to do that a lot in the kitchen at the center here in Colorado when I taught home management. It's such a great snack.
And I like to roast nuts and seeds.
And I just have to say, Bonnie is an amazing cook, and we could all learn from Bonnie.
That's all the questions. Okay, so now one of the other challenges that a lot of us have faced during the pandemic is being out of work and our incomes maybe being a little bit more limited during this time. So we have to think about eating healthy on a budget and what does that look like? And so when I think about eating healthy on a budget, I always think about 3 P's, which are plan, purchase, and prepare. So planning right now looks a little bit different than it ever has before. The stores have items that aren't on the shelves. Delivery times can sometimes be a little bit harder to get. It can be harder to find volunteers who are willing to go with us to the grocery store, or a little bit more difficult to get a shop assistant at the grocery store. So planning is more important than ever before. Although I do think, like Maureen said, it's getting better, and we are finding, other than meat, I think we're finding more of most items on the shelves now. It's still a little bit more essential to plan out in advance. So when I think about planning, a few things that are really important are looking for things that are on sale and maximizing the use of those coupons. And so there are a lot of ads that you can use, or apps that you can use to do that. I really like Ibotta a lot. But there are eBay, there's a ton of apps. You can use your King Super or Kroger if you have that store in your area, or a Kroger affiliate store in your area app, and you can download the coupons to your shopper's card so that they'll automatically apply. And if you use King Supers for delivery, you'll be able to then apply those coupons to your purchases. And I think you can do the same thing with Walmart as well. And that Walmart does offer delivery options. So maximizing the use of those coupons is great. You can also find sales deals on the NFB Newsline site for Walmart and Target. So if you are an NFB Newsline subscriber, you can use the Walmart and Target circulars to look for grocery ads that you might be interested in taking advantage of. Plan your meals in advance. So make a menu, check to see what you have on hand at your house that you might need to use. What do you have in your freezer? A lot of times I find the freezer is sort of like this cavern where things sometimes go to get lost, and by the time I find them in there again, they're freezer burnt and not usable. So taking a really good inventory of what you have in your fridge and your freezer to inspire your meal planning for the week is always a really great idea. And after you take a look around at what you have and make yourself a menu of the types of items that you would like to have for meals and snacks for the week, think about going through one more time and just checking to see what you have so that you don't get something that you already have on hand. A good example of this is like I love canned mushrooms, and I just love them so much that I almost always put them on my grocery list. And I went into our cupboard the other day and realized we have like 20 cans of mushrooms, because sometimes we, don't always use as many of them as I thought we did. And so I think we need some, but because I didn't use my own advice and check in advance, I failed and ordered something that we didn't necessarily need, that I could have waited on, that would have saved me some money. Just again with the planning, like Maureen said, think meatless, and she gave a lot of great examples of how that is helpful. So when you get to the purchasing phase, some good things to think about are eating in season. Right now, we know that farmers across the country are having to throw things away. So if you know people who have a garden, if you know ways that you can participate in a virtual farmers market, a lot of farmers markets are happening now virtually. So, look into those and eat local and eat in season, and it can save you money. And also the things that you're going to find to eat are going to be tastier. When you can't buy fresh, and this is a problem right now that some of us have because it is a little harder to get those delivery times. So we might be shopping a little less frequently. Like maybe we're shopping every other week instead of every week. And so we don't always want to buy all of our produce fresh. It's perfectly fine to buy things that are frozen. Frozen fruits and vegetables can be great. The only piece of advice I would give with fruits is make sure that your fruit is frozen in its own juice instead of some kind of sweetened syrup, because that can add a lot of calories. And in my opinion, fruit that's frozen in sweetened syrup tastes really gross anyway. So just check to make sure it's frozen in a way that is most healthy. If you have to buy canned items, that's okay too. Just think about buying canned items that are low sodium. It's, if you're gonna think good, better, best, buying fresh produce is great. It came, fresh from the farm. That's wonderful. It's delicious. It's in season, yada, yada. Frozen is really great too. It's picked at its height of freshness and then frozen. But canned is still better than eating, a bunch of overly processed boxed junk. Think about buying store brand items where you can, because they're oftentimes cheaper. And, always do those price comparisons because they're not always cheaper. Sometimes you're going to find name brand stuff that's on sale, but there's nothing wrong with buying the store brand items. There might be some things that you prefer not to buy that way, but it's always a good thing to think about. And so then after you get all your groceries home, you're going to have to think about preparation. A thing I always like to think about is don't be afraid to cook in bulk. Because you can make lots of things and you can freeze them. And that's just going to make it easier on some of those nights. Just like Maureen was talking about that she freezes some pizza. If you make a big pot of chili, you can go ahead and freeze half of it. Or a casserole, you can freeze part of it. There's so many things. And if I don't know if I can freeze something or not, because there are some things that I'm not sure how they're going to freeze, I usually just Google it and check it out and see if other people freeze them or not. And that's kind of how I determine, whether or not, or I'll call my granny or, hey, Granny, can I freeze this? And she'll tell me what she thinks about it. So, but it helps to keep you from eating out on nights when you don't feel like cooking because you've already got that meal prepared. It's often cheaper to buy in bulk. And since we don't necessarily want to keep all that bulk stuff in our house, just going ahead and using it up and then putting it in the freezer so it's already made is a really good option. And it's a great way to make sure that you're eating your leftovers instead of, like Kevin was talking about, sometimes when you just keep them in the fridge, you forget about them and you don't eat them in time. So if you have a good system for storing things in the freezer and you know where it is and you know you're going to be able to get to it again when you want it, cooking in bulk and freezing is always a great option. Be creative with your leftovers. We waste a ton of food in the United States, and the impact goes straight to our wallets. You can often use leftovers in a creative way. If you're thinking, oh, spaghetti for the 4th night in a row, you can put, if you have leftover veggies, you can put them in soups or you can put them in casserole. If you make a pot of beans and maybe you had beans and rice one night, or maybe another night you want to make a bean burrito, or maybe you want to, mash them up and make a bean dip out of them. And there's all kinds of ways, but just learning to be creative with your leftovers. And again, if you don't know what to do with something, or you're not sure of an idea of how you can do with something, the internet is just a great source of information on how you can use things in a different way than you might have been thinking about. When preparing, think about staying away from that fryer. Doing more baking, sauteing, using the crock pot or the pressure cooker, or grilling, broiling. All of these are much healthier options. And if you like that fried crispiness, the air fryer is a great option as well. But just staying away from deep frying stuff in a vat of grease is always a great thing to think about when you're preparing your food. Spice to your life. I loved listening to Bonnie talk about roasting beans and finding different spice blends. To me, finding different spices that you can use in your food to add different flavor is really fun, and it can totally change the tone of the dish. So just trying new spices or trying spices in creative ways is a great tip when you're thinking about preparing your food. So just some general tips to think about. Again, some of these have been mentioned already, but I'll just reiterate because I think that they're really important. Shopping the outer parameters of the store. That's where you're going to find your freshest food. Drink lots of water. And if you're wanting something different than water, think about sticking with those unsweetened beverages. And remember, your alcohol consumption not only contains calories that you have to think about when you're thinking about your food, but it also works to dehydrate you. So if you're drinking alcohol, you need to be drinking even more water. But just being mindful of your alcohol consumption is a good thing to do during this time. I like to think about eating big to small. Something that somebody told me one time that really stuck with me was eat breakfast like a king, lunch like a prince, and dinner like a pauper. So you're thinking about when you eat your breakfast in the morning, you are consuming your calories that are going to be pushing you through the longest stretch of the day. You eat your lunch, you've definitely got less of the day to go. And by the time you eat dinner, we're going to be going to bed in a couple of hours. So you really don't need to eat so big at dinner. And a lot of us make dinner the meal, the eating focal point of our day. And we eat the biggest meal at dinner. But when we can think about eating small at dinner before bed, that's a really, really great thing. And, again, this is a little bit different, but if you are having trouble with eating during the quarantine, you can think about maybe even doing intermittent fasting. And intermittent fasting is basically having a time of day when you eat and a time of day when you don't eat. And so you might eat for 12 hours a day and fast for 12 hours a day. Or you might eat for 8 hours a day and fast for 16 hours a day. And so it's a great way to help your body learn to burn fat. instead of having those simple carbs on hand to burn, which is a really good thing. It puts your body into what's called a state of ketosis. And so that's really good. But the other thing it does is it just sort of helps you to be mindful that after this time of night, I don't eat, and I don't eat again until this time in the morning. And the very, very simplest thing that it does is it just gives you less hours a day to consume calories. So thinking about that can be really good as well. And so those are just some really easy tips that you can think. Eating real food, less processed food. So, eating more vegetables, nuts, seeds, less macaroni and cheese. Kevin's eating less candy bars. But eating things that where it comes from. Did it grow from the ground? Did it come from an animal? Can you trace its origin? Can you pronounce its ingredients? Is a really great thing to think about as well. So let's see if we have any questions.
Kevin?
Yeah, a couple things. We thought, Jessica, that you were hoarding mushrooms. We didn't know that you got sidetracked and we just thought you were hoarding. We
Hey, I would not like for the grocery store to run out of mushrooms. So if I was going to hoard something, mushrooms would probably be it.
Well, lucky we're all the same around here. We throw mushrooms in anything. Cereal, throw some mushrooms in there. I'm always mindful during these discussions too of thinking through my impact on the planet in terms of what I eat. At least I try to. We're all guilty of falling into the eat what you want when you want. But what's the impact on the planet? And that's where Meatless Mondays and maybe even Tuesdays and Wednesdays comes in, along with other factors. And I'm also mindful of hunger and food insecurity. I read recently, and this is before the pandemic, that if no food could be brought into Colorado from outside, we'd pretty much be out of food in about 4 days. So, being mindful of the food chain and buying local and those kinds of things, it's all part of that picture, along with the fact that there are people hungry, and how that plays into it in my mind and in my heart as well, that there are people hungry, and some of them are blind people, by the way, and people with disabilities, because we're often, not always, but often at the lower end of the sort of the spectrum of poverty. So those are thoughts that I had. Thanks, guys.
And just to throw in there with the environment issue, so the livestock industry is responsible for 18% of all of the man-made greenhouse gas emissions due to the methane and the deforestation. So giving up meat 1 day a week is going to do a lot for the planet.
We have Gail.
I was just going to mention another awesome website. It's called nutritionfacts.org. And he puts out he's a vegan, but a vegetarian, but he does scientific research on, heart disease or this or that, something, fat, obesity, or just different things. And every day he puts out a video, and it's like a 3-minute deal. And it's scientifically based, and he'll always have the data to back up whatever he's talking about. It's really pretty phenomenal website. So nutritionfacts.org.
Awesome.
Do you remember the name of the doctor, Gail?
Grieger, I think, or Grieger, or Grieger.
I watched so many of his videos. They are fantastic, and they're short, guys, too.
Yeah.
He packs in 5 minutes. You're blown away by the information. They're great. Thank you, Gail, for bringing that up.
All right. We've got Mark. Mark.
Mark, are you there? Let's go to somebody else and see if Mark comes back.
That's all of them.
Okay. All right. Well, it looks like
we got one more. Chelsea's back.
Chelsea.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. If Bonnie was still on the line, the roasting beans sound very interesting. But what do you do? You don't leave them in the can, do you? I missed that part.
No, so you laid them out. So you drain your can, you laid them out, let them dry a little bit. You know, you can pat them dry with some paper towel. I always coated mine in just a little bit of oil and then whatever seasoning, and then you roast them in the oven.
Put them on a cookie sheet.
Oh,
Yeah, cookie sheet.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, okay, cool. I just wanted to.
In the can.
No.
I'm just teasing you, Chelsea.
Okay.
All right.
No, I got you. And then I just want to second Jess and Maureen. Like I am the queen of spices. I mean, just today I was making I happened upon one of those veggie stir fry kits, and I had some rice to go with it, and I just sauteed some of that and some bell pepper that I had, and then the spices I used were garlic, ginger, and the Chinese 5-spice.
Oh,
And
yeah.
a little bit of curry powder for the rice. Oh,
So we'll come over later. If
Yeah.
you have some leftovers, we'll help you not waste.
Yeah.
All right. We've got Leah Campbell. Leah, you can hit unmute there. It's not letting me. All right. There you
All right, got it.
Yeah.
Y'all were talking about the edamame and you mentioned the soy milk. What about the fact that it mimics estrogen? And I've always heard that you want to really limit the amount of soy that you consume because of possible risk of increasing cancer.
So that might be more true for males.
Males,
You can
yeah.
talk to your physician about that. But I think that if you're not loading up on soy milk and edamame every day, I would not be as concerned with that.
go. All right. Kev. Oh, hang on. Sorry, you can unmute again, Kev. There you go.
I was just thinking our good friend John Perea is a vegan. He's been a vegan ever since I think I've known him, like a decade. He's crazy health conscious, which I think is probably why he's so vigorous and, you know, like a lot of us would like to be. I also want to remind folks real quick, because I know we're going to close out soon, that these are up on our YouTube channel, and we're getting them up there as fast as we can. And I absolutely guarantee this will be one of our most popular ever.
So Kevin, somebody asked for Maureen's list. So we'll get that together, and what we'll do is we'll actually add that to the notes on the YouTube video.
Yeah, that's perfect.
All right. Now we've got NFB of Alaska.
Hey, I just wanted to come back and just say the important thing about roasting beans is you need to get them dry. Maybe Maureen mentioned that.
Mhm.
And I've done it a couple ways. I've actually put them in the lettuce spinner once I've rinsed them. But then I saw, like I said, the recipe the other day, and it just said lay them out on a dish towel. So I have those thin, big dish towels, and I laid them on the pan I was going to put them on, and I just let them sit there, and then I kind of just scooped them off and onto the pan. And I always use those mats, those silicone mats. So then it was on the silicone mats. Then I just took the olive oil, sprinkled a little, and then added the spice and just kind of stirred them up with my hands, and then laid them out straight and then stuck them in the oven. And the oven was at 425.
All right. Let's see. We got Mark back. Mark, you there?
Hello?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, my microphone went on strike for a few minutes. I apologize.
You're good.
But I understand that in some countries, we don't do it as much here, but they tend to take that long break in the around noon and eat their big meal at noon. Can you talk more about that?
I mean, you can do that, definitely. I don't know what more to say about it, really.
Yeah, and Jessica actually did mention that when she had talked about breakfast like a king,
Yeah.
like a prince, and dinner like a pauper. And so just getting your calories early on in the day.
Just eat less before you go to bed.
Less before you go to bed. People
That's
think
the
it helps
most
you sleep
important
better.
thing.
And yeah.
But I think you hit it on the head. I wasn't being flippant when I said, I just think you hit it on the head with just taking that time whenever it is, whether it's your breakfast or whether it's your lunch, but just making sure that you're not eating your big meal right at dinner time.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Cool.
All right, that's all the questions.
Well, awesome. Well, thanks everybody for joining us, and we will hopefully see you all back here tomorrow. We're going to be talking Nature of Independence and for Philosophy Friday. So thanks everyone.
Thank you. This was really helpful.
Thank you.